The most dangerous political battles are not fought between parties. They are fought within them. As the midterms approach, Donald Trump has turned back to the economy, not with tax cuts or deregulation, but with something far more disruptive, populism aimed straight at corporate America. Credit card rate caps, housing restrictions on institutional investors, public pressure on the Federal Reserve. On the surface, it sounds like a revolt against Wall Street, but look closer and you see the real conflict. Trump isn't fighting Democrats. He's fighting his own party. Republican lawmakers weren't briefed. Many are openly hostile. Some are quietly ignoring him. Congress, once content to cheer from the sidelines, is now the gatekeeper standing in his way. And that raises a deeper question, one that matters to you as a voter, a consumer, a citizen. In modern politics, does action still matter, or is the message enough? If you want to understand where this collision leads, stay with me, because to grasp what's happening now, we need to define the problem clearly. To understand this moment, we need to separate what is being said from what can actually be done. Trump's recent economic proposals share a common target: affordability. Housing costs, credit card debt, everyday financial pressure. These are issues that cut across party lines and poll well with voters who feel the system no longer works for them. But here's the structural problem. Most of these ideas cannot happen by presidential will alone. They require legislation, they require committees, votes, coalition building, and that means Congress, a Republican Congress that is ideologically split and institutionally cautious. On one side is Trump's populist instinct: confront concentrated power, signal conflict with elites, show voters you're fighting. On the other is the GOP's governing muscle memory: deregulation, market solutions, and deep skepticism of price controls. So the issue is no longer whether these proposals are popular. The issue is whether they are meant to pass at all. To see why this contradiction exists, we have to go back, not weeks but years, to how the Republican economic identity was formed. To understand this contradiction, you have to look at the history that shaped it. For decades, the Republican economic identity was built around a simple bargain: markets first, government last, growth would trickle down, and voters would be rewarded through tax cuts, cheaper capital, and rising asset values. It was an elite-driven model, but it was coherent. Trump disrupted that order, not with a new system but with a new story. He spoke to voters who felt excluded from those gains: workers priced out of housing, families buried in consumer debt, people who sensed that the economy was doing well but their lives were not. Yet the party itself never fully transformed. Its institutions stayed the same. Its donors stayed the same. Its legislative instincts stayed the same. So what you're seeing now is not confusion, it's a lag between a populist base and an establishment structure. Trump changed the language of the party faster than he changed its machinery. And when pressure rises, mismatched systems don't bend quietly, they break. That break becomes visible in the first real stress test. The first crack appears when ideas move from rallies to reality. Take the proposal to cap credit card interest rates at 10%. It lands like a thunderclap. For voters, it sounds simple, fair even. For Wall Street, it's heresy. And for Republican leadership in Congress, it's something worse, politically radioactive. Within hours, GOP leaders dismiss it publicly, casually. One calls it unworkable. Another warns it could restrict access to credit. Behind the scenes, lawmakers admit they were blindsided. No rollout, no strategy, no coalition. This is the first mini crisis, not because the policy collapses, but because the illusion does. Trump can propose, he can dominate the news cycle, but he cannot force alignment inside his own party, and that exposes a dangerous gap. The president is speaking the language of economic rebellion. Congress is responding in the dialect of institutional preservation. If you're paying attention, this is where you should pause, because when messaging outruns governance, something else takes over. The system adapts, often in ways the public never sees. What takes over is the hidden machinery of power. In Washington, policy is only the visible surface. Beneath it sits a system designed to slow change, dilute conflict, and protect existing interests. Committees, lobbyists, donors, regulatory norms. This is where bold ideas go to be softened or quietly buried. Trump's proposals collide directly with that machinery. Capping interest rates threatens financial institutions that fund campaigns. Restricting institutional investors in housing disrupts capital flows that lawmakers rely on for market stability. Even pressuring the Federal Reserve challenges a norm Republicans have defended for decades: central bank independence. So the resistance you're seeing isn't personal, it's structural. Many Republicans don't need to defeat Trump publicly. They just need to wait him out, let the headlines fade, let the news cycle move on, let messaging substitute for law. And here's the crucial insight: this system doesn't require coordination to function. Inaction is its default setting. But when pressure keeps building, when words keep colliding with reality, the system eventually produces a second, sharper rupture. And that one is impossible to ignore. The second rupture comes when pressure turns personal. Trump's Justice Department opens a perjury investigation into Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell, not over corruption but over refusal. Refusal to cut interest rates. Refusal to bend. Suddenly, this is no longer abstract populism. It's an institutional confrontation. And this time, the backlash is louder. Republicans openly rebel. Some warn it could derail the confirmation of the next Fed chair. Others see a red line being crossed. Why? Because the Federal Reserve isn't just another agency. It's a symbol of stability, of restraint, of a system designed to stand above politics, at least in theory. Trump is willing to attack that symbol to prove he's fighting. Congress is not willing to pay the price. The rhythm accelerates. Proposals pile up. Housing, credit cards, swipe fees, healthcare frameworks, teased but not delivered. Even allies struggle to keep track. The message floods the zone, but the substance can't keep up. This is the second mini-crisis, not chaos, fragmentation. When everything is announced at once, nothing moves forward. And that's when the consequences begin to land, not on Capitol Hill, but on people's lives. Now shift your perspective from Washington to where you live. Because while politicians argue about process, you feel the outcome. You feel it when rent rises faster than wages, when a credit card balance never seems to shrink, when the economy is strong sounds disconnected from your daily stress. Trump's proposals speak directly to that frustration. They name villains: Wall Street, banks, institutional investors. And for a moment it feels like someone is finally fighting on your side. But here's the hard truth. If those fights stay symbolic, your reality doesn't change. You don't benefit from a proposal that never becomes law. You don't pay lower interest because of a tweet. You don't buy a home because of a press release. This is where politics becomes emotional theater. Hope is raised, expectations are set, and when nothing follows, cynicism deepens. If you've ever felt that disconnect between promises and outcomes, you're not alone. And this is why understanding the system matters. If this analysis helps you see the pattern more clearly, pause for a moment. Share it. Stay engaged. Because what happens next goes far beyond American households. What begins at home doesn't stay there. When the United States sends mixed signals on economic policy, the effects ripple outward. Markets react not just to laws but to credibility. Allies watch for consistency. Rivals look for weakness. Populist messaging without legislative follow-through creates uncertainty. Investors hesitate. Financial institutions brace. Even the Federal Reserve's perceived independence, long a global anchor, comes into question. That matters far beyond Washington. At the same time, America's internal contradictions weaken its negotiating posture. It's harder to champion free markets abroad while flirting with price controls at home. Harder to argue stability when your own institutions are under public attack. This isn't about ideology, it's about coherence. Economic power rests on trust. Trust that rules will be predictable, that institutions will endure, that politics won't overwhelm the system. When that trust erodes, volatility fills the gap, and volatility never stays contained. So the real question isn't whether Trump's proposals pass. It's what their existence and their failure signal to the world. To answer that, we need to look forward, not with certainty, but with scenarios. Looking ahead, there are three plausible paths, not predictions, but trajectories shaped by how this tension resolves. The first is the optimistic scenario. Trump's populist rhetoric forces a recalibration. Republicans quietly adapt, small pieces of legislation pass, modest housing reforms, limited financial regulation, not a revolution but a correction. The party absorbs populism without breaking its core institutions. The second is the middle path, and the most likely. Talk replaces action. Proposals remain symbolic. Trump campaigns on fighting Wall Street. Congress campaigns on tax cuts and stability. Voters hear both messages and fill in the gaps themselves. Nothing fundamental changes, but the narrative carries the election. Then there's the darkest scenario, escalation. Institutions weaken. Pressure on the Fed intensifies. Markets lose confidence. Internal party conflict spills into paralysis. In trying to prove he's fighting the system, Trump destabilizes it, and the costs land on everyone else. Which future emerges depends less on ideology than on incentives, on whether politics rewards outcomes or just performance. And that brings us to the final insight, the one that determines what this moment really means. This moment tells us something uncomfortable about modern power. In today's politics, success is no longer measured by what gets built or passed, but by what gets signaled. Trump's economic pivot may never become law, and it may not need to. If voters believe he's fighting the right enemies, the strategy works. But there's a cost. When performance replaces policy, institutions slowly hollow out, trust erodes, cynicism grows, and the gap between promise and reality widens. You, as a citizen, are left navigating noise instead of outcomes. The real choice ahead isn't between left and right or even populism and markets. It's between politics as theater and politics as governance. If you want more analysis that cuts through the performance and explains the system underneath, stay with me, share this conversation, question what you're being shown, because in an age where talk is power, understanding how that power works is the only real advantage you have.